In today's Twisted Stories, Unexplained Sounds, listeners' strange experiences in an old house, and Dead Man's USB drive. This is Twisted Stories with me, Michael, and in today's episode, we'll delve into inexplicable sounds, recordings that confuse and terrify, capturing a world we know very little about.
In 2013, an anonymous user logged into 4chan and shared a story about an old recording they had. Around 1994-95, the person was 15 years old, they said, and during that time, they used to stay up late in their room recording their favorite songs and other interesting things from the radio. One night, the person was listening to the radio station WKCR 89.9 New York, and as the recording played, the program suddenly broke.
John Burns, son of John Sr. Maryland, brother of Kathy and Chris, step of friend of Lisa December 21st, 1988, Barry Valentino, son of Barry Sr. and Jean, brother of Scott, Mark, and Lisa Ann's friend, my friend. February 1985, Frank Oppenheimer, brother of Robert, husband of Jackie and Emily, father of Michael, our friend. May 1987, Henrietta Graham, mother of Ian, Emerald, Sally, my friend. March 17, 1988, Edward McGellis, brother of William, Jim, May, and Peggy, father of Shirley, Abby, and Geraldine. April 1988, Ruth Marnani, wife of Rocco, friend of Bob and me. October 1988, Morgan Shoemake, father of Barbara, husband of Elsie, Barbara's dad. August 22nd, 1985, Irene McGellis DeTulio, sister of Millie, Margaret, Dan, Tony, Ida, Dominic, Nair, Scat, Elvira, and Joe, wife of William, mother of Mary Ann, grandmother of Liz and Billy, and me. July 4th, 1987, Peter Gunlock, son of Robert, step of Kay, brother of Bob, Karen, Cindy, and Mary, husband of Lisa, father of Shady, Mocha, Rick, and Lucy, my brother-in-law. November 1988, John Burns, son of John Sr. and Marilyn, brother of Kathy and Chris, step of friend of Lisa and Billy. December 21st, 1988, Barry Valentino, son of Barry Sr. and Jean, brother of Scott, Mark, and Lisa, Ann's friend. February 1985, Frank Oppenheimer, brother of Robert, husband of Jackie and Millie, father of Michael. May 1987, Henrietta Graham, mother of Ian, Emerald, Sally. March 17, 1988, Edward McGellis, brother of William, Jim, May, and Peggy, father of Shirley, Abby, and Geraldine. Heart attack, 1988, Ruth Manani, wife of Uncle, friend of Bob. October 1988, Morgan Shoemake, father of Barbara, husband of Elsie, kidney failure.
You're tuned to WKCR-FM New York, 89.9 on your dial. Colombian music is running a little late. It will be starting in a few minutes.
The voice heard reads out names of more or less known individuals, along with their dates of death. Who is reading them? We do not know, nor do we know whose breath it is that we hear. Well, even further back in time. On May 26, 1961, the Soviet state news agency TASS releases a brief press statement mentioning that a Soviet satellite had burned up upon entering Earth's atmosphere. The satellite was the size of a bus, but according to the news agency, it had been unmanned. They do not disclose more details. On May 16, 2 young men are sitting on a rooftop in Turin, Italy. It's midnight. The brothers Achille and Giovanni Battista Giudica Cordiglia have lugged their radio receiver up the stairs to the roof of one of the city's tallest buildings. Cool winds make their antenna flutter, prompting the brothers to try to burrow deeper into their spring jackets. They twist the knobs until they find the right frequency and start a tape recorder connected to the radio. This is what they hear. Breaks through the static in the brothers' amateur radio equipment. She sounds upset, anxious, almost desperate. According to the brothers' translation, she repeatedly says that she is hot towards the end of the recorded transmission. She mentions seeing a flame and suddenly asks if she's going to crash. Then she repeats that she is hot again and again, as if trying to make herself understand that something is. She sounds almost on the verge of tears. Then she falls silent. Glia brothers would later claim that on that night, they managed to record one of the many unfortunate lost cosmonauts that the Soviet Union allegedly sent to their deaths during the 1960s. With their increasingly advanced radio equipment, the brothers took over an abandoned German bunker in a location called Torre Bert. Over 4 years in the early 1960s, at least 9 recordings of mysterious space communication would be released from Torre Bert. These recordings included an SOS message, SOS to the whole world, and what is claimed to be the strained breaths of a male cosmonaut from a space probe where something seems to have gone very wrong. Noted that the Giudica Cordiglia brothers' recordings have faced a lot of criticism, with many believing that they simply faked most of them, including the desperate woman, the SOS message. However, even the most critical voices acknowledge that some other recordings seem credible. Which lonely signals from space the brothers actually managed to capture on those nights when the Soviet Union was at its most secretive? Perhaps we may never know. Clear transmissions to discover on the radio waves. You can hear them yourself by tuning in to one of the shortwave radio receivers available online. Occasionally, the monotonous hum is interrupted by unfamiliar, often eerie sounds. Computer-generated or pre-recorded voices reciting long series of numbers and letters. And they have been broadcasting their mysterious ghost program since at least World War I. No one knows who is behind them or why they are broadcast, but they continue to this day. Those who have analyzed the transmissions and followed them year after year say you can set your watch by them. They whisper about states using radio broadcasts to communicate with spies abroad, but so far, few, if any, have penetrated the shell of secrets and learned the truth behind the number stations. And have made their way into the world of video games. In the spring of 2010, a story emerged that mysterious radio channels could be picked up in the game Fallout 3. The game is set in a post-apocalyptic world where players navigate a destroyed USA, trying to survive attacks from mutated monsters and crazed raiders. But suddenly, according to the ghost story, a darkness from reality seemed to peek through the pixelated game world. There are several radio stations to listen to. The main and most lively one is Galaxy News Radio. GNR players may discover that they can kill the station's host, 3Dog, and if they do, he is replaced by technician Margaret. She is not as charismatic and doesn't say much between songs, almost seeming displeased with her new job. Moreover, players never encounter her in the game, making her invulnerable to being killed. Players are stuck with Margaret. May not know is that, under certain circumstances, GNR can transform into a number station. A number station is a radio station that broadcasts only secret coded messages. Articulation suggests that they are used as controls for nuclear systems, and in reality, they exist in hundreds worldwide. If you want to learn more about them, you can check Wikipedia. No one knows exactly what you need to do to hear the number station. Since no one has succeeded with 3Dog alive, it seems like you have to kill him. Additionally, skipping the mission Galaxy News Radio, where you boost the channel's transmissions beyond the immediate vicinity, is necessary. This is easily done either through a dialogue option or by checking Fallout Wiki to find out where to go next in the main. Finally, it appears that you have to destroy the military base Raven Rock. This seems to be the triggering factor that turns GNR into a number station permanently. However, many players who have tried all these things continue to hear the regular broadcasts with Margaret, suggesting there may be additional criteria that are not yet established, who manage to hit the right conditions. Seconds after Raven Rock is destroyed, you'll see the message, "Radio signal lost," and a few seconds later, "Radio signal." However, you still cannot listen to NAR because you haven't boosted its signal, and you are too far away. Fortunately, Raven Rock is in the mountains, even near one of the few places outside Washington, D.C. city where you can get high enough to receive the station. So far, these are the confirmed locations where you can receive GNR as a number station. 1. In the immediate vicinity of Washington, D.C. Of course, this also applies to the regular GNR in the game. 2. On top of the Ferris wheel on that redneck island. I can't remember its name right. 3. On top of some of the large satellite communication dishes you can climb up to in the northwest area of the map. 4. On the roof of Tenpenny Tower, although it might be within the channel's coverage area anyway. Feel free to try it in the game and get back to me on this. 5. At the highest point of the broken bridge near Arifu. Again, this may be within the coverage area anyway. 6. On some of the highest mountain peaks in the Raven Rock area. This is, of course, your best chance to quickly pick up the signals from the number station. You'll hear a familiar voice. It's 3 Dog talking, even though you have killed him by this point. However, he sounds unusually disengaged, so I assume it's not 3 Dog, but rather the voice actor Eric Dellums himself. With a monotonous and almost depressed tone, he reads out a series of numbers. They are always single digits, in sequences of 9 to 12 numbers each. For example, 936917234. He never uses a multi-digit number, like 11 or 40. Each message is followed by a couple of minutes of Morse code and ends with the song, "I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire." All other music seems inactive on this channel. Hard to decipher, as its code is widely available, and many people can even recite it by heart. We quickly deciphered a large number of messages written in English. Some sounded entirely ordinary, even comical, such as "washed the car today." Might fancy Chinese tonight? Or have you seen my YouTube video where I kick homeless people in the groin? One read, "The Queen died today. The world mourns, and on a day like this, we are all Englishmen, or how could they do it? Not much time left now." The sound did not proceed with a series of numbers. That Britney actually won an Oscar. 9:33 p.m., February 27, 2033. They had been warned, but they ignored it and continued to push the boundaries of science. The noise, I can't stand it anymore. And the light, my God, I can't handle it. The universe is collapsing around us. I'm not waiting to die. I have a gun in the basement. We could find was a message from 1:27 a.m. July 6, 2027. Unknown things sometimes erupt into loud exclamations, solitary roars that quickly fall silent, leaving us humans in confusion. Beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean, hydrophones rest, underwater devices designed to record sounds, initially built in the 1950s so that the USA could receive an early warning if foreign submarines approached. They are securely attached to the ocean floor, alone in the darkness day in and day out, just listening. Imagine the things they have heard, the creatures of the dark they have encountered. Strange sounds in their everyday lives. An experience comes from the listener Anna, who tells about the house in a small German suburb where she grew up. A house that never wanted to be truly quiet. 1870s. My parents moved in during the 1960s. From the beginning, strange things were noticed. Mom heard a child crying and screaming heartbreakingly on the upper floor. This was a few years before my oldest brother was born, but some years after Mom had a miscarriage. An evening after they had scraped off old paint from the house's wall and painted it anew, they heard a scraping sound from the wall when they were in bed, as if someone was dragging a rake or garden spade along the freshly painted wall. But nothing was visible. They went to bed, and the whole thing repeated several times. Scrape, look out, no one there. Scrape, go out, no one there. My silence. They went out and checked. No trace was visible. Now, there's the matter of the upper floor. Something is there on the upper floor and has been there for more than 50 years. I've already mentioned the child cries, but not the other. On the upper floor, The one closest to the stairs has always belonged to the youngest of us 3 siblings who had our own room, and the innermost room belonged to the oldest sibling who still lived at home. The outer room has a wardrobe that includes a ladder up to the attic, which is actually just a crawl space, but I'll come back to the wardrobe later. I want to tell more about the being that resides up there. Is about to change. Something is to be rebuilt, or if someone in the house is upset, the thumping starts. It's something we all who have lived in the house have heard. Even guests have heard it. I have a cousin who, for several years, didn't dare to go up to the upper floor, thumping a stick on the floor. When you go there, the thumping moves, either to the other room or to the lower floor. When it moves to the walls, I become the most frightened. Then it sounds like someone slamming their fists with full force straight into the wall. You probably think it's not unusual in such an old house, but these aren't normal wooden house sounds. I lived there for 16 years. Besides, all possible natural explanations have been investigated, but there's nothing that can cause these sounds. We simply call this being he. My mom can say, for example, I was angry about this and that, and then he started banging like crazy up there. Played around by turning on and off lights, starting my old cassette tape recorder with the radio, etc. But the spirit in the glass always worked at our home. And most things friends asked if so-and-so liked them, or when they would lose their virginity, came true. But in hindsight, I wonder if we didn't let in more when we did it. When I lived in the outermost room, I could sometimes wake up to strange sounds from the wardrobe. Scratching, gnawing, and that thumping. Sometimes I would open the door to see if there was a rat wreaking havoc in there, but the door couldn't be moved, no matter how I tried. I went to bed with an immovable door. The next morning, it stood wide open. So, that was a listener story from Anna. The haunted houses of the future, maybe they will be our mobile phones and laptops. Already stories circulate about haunted computers that suddenly start behaving in ways one never thought possible. Best on Reddit's No Sleep subforum, written and posted by an individual behind the anonymous account Jay the Throwaway 22. He recounted that his coworker had taken his own life because he lost a USB drive. Now, Jay had that USB drive in his hands and wanted to share what he found inside. I work as a salesperson at a small company dealing with security software. I won't bore you with the details of my job. The only reason I stay there is because I have a girlfriend and an 11-month-old daughter to support. Most of the time, I spend my work hours browsing the internet and longing for something exciting to happen, aside from the usual office gossip that everyone indulges in. For something to happen was fulfilled a few weeks ago in a rather unpleasant way. My coworker, a guy from the HR department whom we'll call Dan for anonymity, came into the office in the midst of some sort of panic attack. He mumbled about a USB drive he had lost and created a scene by throwing people's belongings around in search of it. He kept repeating that it was a small red USB stick with the letter K written on it in black. We were all taken aback and had no idea how to handle the situation until the security personnel arrived and escorted Dan out of the office building. That evening, Dan took his own life. Devastated when we heard about it the next day. Dan used to be such a nice and social guy. However, Everything changed about 6 months ago when his daughter Katharina was hit by a car and fell into a coma at the age of 8. Dan had sole custody of her, and he loved her so much. His desk was full of pictures of her, and he constantly talked about how talented she was. For example, she was apparently an exceptionally gifted cellist. I don't need to say that the accident with Catherine crushed Dan and turned him into a silent shadow of his former self. Catherine lay in a coma for 3 months before she eventually passed away. Dan arranged a funeral in utmost privacy, a colleague later told me, and afterward, Dan never wanted to talk about Catherine and her death again. He stopped socializing with the rest of us at work, and we barely noticed him until he came in and caused chaos over the USB stick. Long time what he would have done if he had found it. Maybe he wouldn't have taken his own life then. And amid these thoughts, fate struck with a surprise. I was in the office kitchen boiling myself a cup of morning coffee when I accidentally dropped a 2-pack of sugar behind the coffee maker. I crouched under the sink to grab the package, and there, under the table a bit toward the wall, lay a small red memory stick with the letter K written on it. I stood up and tried to decide what to do with it. After carrying the stick around in my back pocket all day, I eventually decided to take it home and see what was on it. I know it's an invasion of privacy and selfish, and I should really send it to Dan's family, but it was the most exciting thing that had ever happened to me at work. I just couldn't say no. I plugged the USB stick into my computer. It appeared on the desktop, a USB symbol someone had named K. Inside, there were only 4 folders, all with titles in capital letters. One was called Pictures, another Roland, a third Learn, and the last one's Pictures. There were some nice pictures of Dan and his daughter at an amusement park. I don't want to publish those pictures online. It would be too intrusive. Those are his memories, not something for us to stare at. In the second folder, Roland, I found more puzzling and frightening things. There were some scanned articles in such small formats that they were a bit difficult to read. They all referred to some research presented by a company called Roland Biomech. I've tried to Google it, Roland Biomech, without finding anything. Seemed to be working on experimental technological treatment for disabled and injured patients. One article described an experiment where someone who had lost all their teeth received a kind of meat grinder implant in their mouth to grind down the food they ate before swallowing. At the end of the article, there was a footnote mentioning that this implant had broken and instead sucked in and ground the patient's face from the inside. He died. The treatment of a patient suffering from depression was described. The patient's head was connected to a computer whose software tried to combat depression by feeding encouraging information. The experiment was initially successful, but shortly afterward, the patient began complaining of receiving too much information. After screaming that she knew everything at once for a few hours, she slipped into an apathetic state. There was a form from Roland Biotech that Dan seemed to have filled in. It looked like an application, filled out 3 months ago, containing Dan's personal information and details about Catherine's coma, her blood type, age, and such. Following that, there were some yes, no questions, such as are you prepared for the patient to change in more or less extensive ways through the procedure? Dan had answered yes to. In a later section of the form, where it said requested procedure, Dan had filled in consciousness upload, and over this section, someone had stamped the green word approved. the most difficult to read and understand. Some sections were marked with a yellow pen, and someone had written comments with a pen in the margin. To note, I am not a developer. I am just a software salesperson. I felt that this text looked like code. It was organized in columns with headings such as memories, emotions, problem solving, and the like. In one of the handwritten notes in the margin, I could decipher that it said folder name for input, output, learn, speak. I had had enough of these mysterious documents. I closed the Roland folder and opened Learn. Inside, there were numerous files, documents with strange phononyms such as hello. Did you have a... I clicked on it. A dialog box appeared, indicating that the file was transferring from the USB stick to my computer, and then a new window opened, completely black. Black window, it said, insert command. I pressed the box in the start menu and went on to check the speak folder. I was disappointed. What was this incoherent madness? I knew that Dan loved his daughter more than anything, and that he had taken every chance to keep her, no matter how strange they seemed. But what did he think that weird company Roland Biomech could do about it? I said irritably and opened the Learn folder again. Impatiently, I clicked on two of the files. Hello from before appeared. It closed, and the speak folder opened by itself. Now, it wasn't empty anymore. In it lay a single file named Who Are You? It was an audio file. Here I have uploaded it online so you can listen. That you can hear the sound of someone playing the cello?
Everywhere, all the time, all kinds, and perhaps too rarely do you reflect on what it is you've actually been listening to. When you go to sleep tonight, try lying down and really listening for a while. Listen to everything you can hear. Try to explain it, try to understand it, but don't try for too long. People have gone mad from things like that before. Have your own experience to share, email us. You will find the email in our channel description.